Hey, what's up, everyone? Um, it's Retro Geek here, bringing you another YouTube video. It is June 6th at about 10:43 in the morning here. So, regardless of whenever you're watching this, I hope that you're having a great day. Now, I'm going to take a moment here because I assume that Nintendo is going to release a Direct at some point. I'm hoping it's next Tuesday or just sometime next week. This way, you have the chance to have Sony show off what they just did and Microsoft to show off what they're going to bring, and everybody to bring it out, and then Nintendo to kind of just wrap it up at the end. Because I know that they don't want to miss out on what is potentially the E3 season, even though there isn't an actual E3, um, because they don't want to just be left in the dust. But Nintendo's going to do what it is they're going to do, and if they choose to just completely disregard June and focus on July, that way they are the only person that's talking about games, that's fine. But I am assuming that at some point, since it's been about 4 months, I think, since the last Nintendo Direct, which was in February, um, that we're going to get some kind of Nintendo Direct. And so I wanted to talk about what I think is going to come to Nintendo Direct, and of course, you're welcome to put your thoughts in the comments down below. I'd love to hear what you guys think about any of the games that I personally think are coming, or that you think are coming. And even though I am probably going to touch on a few of them, I just want to mention real quick that this isn't really going to focus on third party announcements. I try to usually reserve those for the developer to mention them directly. Like if Ubisoft has a presentation, I would expect them to talk about Sparks of Hope, even though Nintendo will more likely touch upon it because it is their game. You know, it's using Mario and it's coming to the Switch only. So I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo talks about it, but that is technically a third-party game. Um, so, but yeah, Sparks of Hope will probably be talked about, but I'm not really going to focus more on too many third-party games because that's usually reserved for like uh, either again the third party to say that's okay for Nintendo to use them, or to like what we had with the Indie Direct, where it's just like its own thing. So without further ado, we're going to go to talk about three games that we already know are coming to the Nintendo Direct because Nintendo's already mentioned them, and that is Splatoon 3 because we already have an announced date for the launch of that game, and I just think that Nintendo's going to want to focus more on information about it. Talk about maps, talk about modes or weapons, or just anything else to continue advertising the game. Maybe kind of show it played off on online, and make a big focus of like, oh, now you can play it online with this, that, or the other, and you know this gun's coming. Just a small mention of it because again, we already have Splatoon 3 hype from the people who love to play Splatoon. There's not really much else that you can provide. Um, the next one is Bayonetta 3. Just because there's more, we know that the game is coming out. They showed a little bit of a teaser of it, I think in September last year, and so I would like to see more info and gameplay on it. Just to give expectations of the game. Like, this is how the game's going to look. This is how it's going to run. Here's some boss fights you can expect. Um, Possibly a release date would be nice, or some kind of a launch window, kind of what we have with Zelda now. It's like, hey, it's coming in summer 2023. Something to at least keep it palpable, keep it real for people that are looking forward to the game. And then of course Xenoblade 3. Xenoblade 3 is probably the least likely just because it's basically right around the corner. Like it's going to be coming out real soon. July 29th, the end of next month, which is still basically right around the corner because we got what, a couple weeks left in this month and then 3 or 4 weeks next month. So basically right around the corner. So I don't think there's much else they can show, but I do think that they will probably show something to again keep it palpable, to keep it be like, hey, you Xenoblade fans, it's right around the corner. Here's another look at some characters and the background and the world that this is. Because that's going to be the most important thing is like, where does this fall in the timeline? All that stuff we can figure out later as far as if it's another dimension, if it's own thing like how X was. But just at least show off more of the characters because the more you show off, the more I get excited about it. And of course, I'm going to want to pick it up. And so with those out of the way, we're moving into the most likely category because those games are probably definitively going to be shown off or at least talked upon or touched on. But the next is going to be the most likely to be announced that I want to see announced. And they're in no particular order. They're just as game, the games that I thought about. Um, because outside of something like maybe a 1-2 Switch sequel, for an example, or a Nintendo Land sequel, that doesn't seem very likely because why would you want to touch upon those? Um, these are some big hitters that Nintendo will probably want to touch upon because they've already been rumored. People have already talked about them, so I'm just going to throw them in here for the sake of it. So the first one is what I'm calling Mario Next, or just the next Mario game. Now, I think it's going to be a smaller kind of open world game, similar to Bowser's Fury, because that was a very fun experience. But I think it's going to also be kind of closed off, you know, um, maybe co-op like how Bowser's Fury was, but just you can basically go anywhere to begin with. Sort of like Sunshine, I guess that's the best example. We can sort of run everywhere in Sunshine, but more becomes available as you get stars or whatever the collectible is for the game. To where maybe a portal opens up and takes you to another zone. I don't think it's going to be like Odyssey because Odyssey kind of felt like, hey, everything is a closed zone that you go to individually, but something where you could basically like when you get to the end of the game, you can basically go back to the beginning and just run all the way to the end through all the zones, something like that, where you just have access to everything. I'm hoping that it's full open world like that, kind of like how Bowser's Fury was. Again, you could go anywhere in that game, especially towards the end, but just stuff was just locked off to boo. So I think something like that would be fine. But next, Donkey Kong. Either a teaser showing that's coming off like 2023, 2024, or a fully announced Donkey Kong game. Now, it could be similar to the Donkey Kong Country formula, just because, again, that's worked so well for Nintendo, right? Um, Donkey Kong Country Returns was a big hit on the Wii. I love Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze on the Wii U, and of course they brought that over to the Switch. So that formula could continue, but I would personally like to see something more like Mario Odyssey, where it's a 3D, open zone world where you go to these different areas and you just explore and find stuff at your leisure, and you figure out the little clues or whatever. Because if they take something like Donkey Kong Country where like stuff's hidden behind trees or down a little crook or whatever, or you have to pound stuff, and you get abilities along the way where like maybe Donkey Kong learns how to do something, and it opens up more areas. I think it'd be really fun, a really fun experience. But even if he's got all of his abilities from the beginning, that's fine. You just have to kind of explore and see if I pound on this bridge, is it going to take me to a hidden area or am I going to die? Something like that. Um, so yeah, Donkey Kong 64, Mario Odyssey. It's kind of an open world kind of game. I think that'd be fun. The next, uh, more of a personal for me, really, but Kid Icarus. And while I would love a new game in the series, I'm thinking that more likely Nintendo is going to go about the remake route. I mean, we've heard, was it Bandai Namco? I think it was Bandai Namco, was working on a game, an action game for Nintendo. And people are speculating all kinds of games, and I'm in the route that it's Kid Icarus. And of course, we've seen them do this before with like Metopia, where they're bringing back like some 3D games. So, or some 3DS games, I should say. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're just like, you know what, this didn't do nearly as well as we thought it would, and so we're going to go ahead and bring back Kid Icarus. And yeah, I think that they'll just ultimately use it as a way of like sort of bringing the Kid Icarus series back. Like maybe they think, oh, we're gonna. Because I think they said the same thing about Ocarina of Time 3D, where it's like we want to introduce this game to a new audience, so they're gonna bring it back on the Switch probably, and then maybe talk about the next Kid Icarus game. But I personally would just love a new Kid Icarus, not like a revamped version of the original, or Unless of course it's really good looking, or of Uprising, because I already own Uprising. But I think that they're going to do that. I also would maybe like to see a Punch Out game because it's been a long time since we've had a Punch Out game. I think the last one was on the Wii. So we haven't had Punch Out in a while. But is it big enough of a seller for Nintendo to consider even doing it? It's kind of like a Nintendo Land. I would love to see another Nintendo Land 2. I think I talked about that in a previous video. And if not, I'll talk about what I would like to see from a Nintendo Land 2. But because I think it would work great with an online infrastructure and all that stuff and customizability. But did it sell enough for Nintendo to even consider it? I'd love to see a Punch Out 2, but probably not going to happen. But the next likely candidate, and it's a big likely candidate because they usually have one every year, is Zelda. You know, Nintendo could go about the route of releasing a new Zelda soon to sort of quench the appetite of Zelda fans like myself that are just waiting for Breath of the Wild 2 to come out. Um, I think it's going to be just like a real quick, like maybe not even a Mario 35 kind of game where it's just like a quick online game. But it could be something like a Four Swords game or a Triforce Heroes game that focuses more on like an online, element, playing with other people, and solving puzzles together. I can see all kinds of neat little Zelda emojis to sort of communicate. And it'd be nice if it had something similar to the Dungeon Creator of Link's Awakening, where you can go in and you can make this dungeon yourself, get online with people and play it, try it out. Um, or maybe just do like Mario Maker again, where it's just like this game is something that you create and other people play, and then you jump into other people's online dungeons and you play with them and stuff like that. And you rank it. Um, I think that would be more fun, just because there's nothing wrong with the single player Zeldas. In fact, I love them and I prefer them more so than I prefer Four Swords and Triforce Heroes, because when you focus on an online game, like you did with Triforce Heroes and like you did with Metroid Prime Federation Force, the game becomes strictly multiplayer based. And when you can't find anybody to play, the missions become harder, the game becomes less fun, and it sort of disassociates itself from what it's meant to be. But I think that if done right, a Four Swords Triforce Heroes kind of sequel game where you're playing online for the people would be fun, because I think that Nintendo's really going to focus more on having Wind Waker and Twilight Princess be their own separate things, like they did with the Wii U. They were separate games, they weren't bundled together, and like they did with Skyward Sword HD, where it's its own game. So those games will probably come. I just don't know if they're going to be bundled. Again, only time will tell if that's an actual reality. Now, something else that I would like to see are NSO updates. It's possible that those rumors for like the Game Boy and the Game Boy Advance are true, and Nintendo uses this as a way to fluff up the content that's on that's on the NSO app. So, for an example, if there isn't a Metroid this year, Nintendo could use that as a bargaining chip, like I've talked about in a previous video, which is like, but you can replay Fusion and you can replay Return of Samus, or Samus Returns, I should say, um, whatever, Metroid 2, while you wait for Prime 4. Um, and they could also do the same thing with Zelda titles, where maybe there's not a Zelda title, but rather than remake them, they can just say, look, you can go back and play the original Link's Awakening. You can play Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons. You can play Minish Cap. It's all right here at your fingertips to play. Um, a possible surprise console, like they did with the Genesis. So perhaps they'll bring over something like the Sega Saturn, since that's the next step for Sega going up, or even the GameCube, which I would like to see. Again, I've talked in the past about how I'd love Nintendo to be fully backwards compatible, like what they were with the Wii, where you could access to the GameCube and the Wii, and even some Wii U games that maybe they're not interested in porting over. I don't know, but Um, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to continue to add value to the expansion pack because of that. So, for an example, maybe the Game Boy and the Game Boy Advance games are part of the actual subscription since they're, I'm not saying that they're cheap, but they're just the 2D, quality games. They're not really big high res games like the GameCube and all that are. They're not these big, expansive 3D games. Um, and so they focus more maybe being in the GameCube, Saturn, or whatever, to the expansion pack to add more value to it. Um, Only time will tell of that, because you know would they go about that? Because Nintendo so far hasn't really done the GameCube. They kind of avoided it even with the Wii U, um, and even with the Wii, they've done like 64. They've done you know Genesis. They've done the not the Commodore 64, the TurboGrafx 16, and all that. So that could be something that we do. So yeah, I think that's what they're going to do. They're going to try and do something like that where they're going to announce new stuff for, and this could also be close to the end of the year like they did last year, where they announce this is what's coming to the base Nintendo Switch Online subscription, and then here's a surprise that you maybe weren't expecting for the expansion pack. And now, with those out of the way, sadly, I now have to talk about games that are the least likely to come over. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news like this, but this is just based upon what I'm seeing from Nintendo. Um, so we're going to start off with something that is still likely, but maybe not. A new Star Fox entry. Now, I would like to see a new Star Fox, including an online multiplayer version, similar to like the verses that you could get on Star Fox 64. We could like run on foot and shoot people, or you can then hop into an R wing and then take off and fly, and it's just all kinds of hectic chaos. Because can you imagine if like people are still on the ground, they haven't unlocked the R wing yet? Almost like Titanfall in a way, where you could be playing on foot, and then you have to get so many points, you have to wait so long, and you can call down an R wing or something, and you can get in the R wing and then go into land mode and run around, or have it transform into a tank, or just fly around and shoot people. I think it'd be fun to do something like that online, but and also maybe they'll do stuff like Zero, just as like trying to recoup some of the cost of that. But again, just based upon how Star Fox has been in the past, I wouldn't be surprised if it skips this year again. And now for the big elephant in the room, Metroid. Love Metroid. It's probably one of my favorite series that Nintendo comes out with outside of Zelda. I love Zelda. I love most of their franchises. But Metroid has always been fun. Like Metroid Dread, fun, really fun game. I've enjoyed playing all of them. Um, but there's no news on Metroid Prime 4. In what, 5 years? I think they said something along the lines of it's coming. They showed a little cloud turning into a 4, and that's it. And then the last time we got any news about it was just like, yeah, it's been delayed and we're having retro work on it. Well, what's happened to it since? You haven't shown off a teaser, even a CGI teaser. You haven't shown off any gameplay. You haven't announced it. Like, even with Zelda, even when the game got delayed, you're like, hey, it's getting delayed. We're sorry. You haven't come out and said anything about Metroid Prime 4, whether it's being delayed. So I'm thinking that maybe there's a teaser or some brief mention of it being delayed just to have it be its own thing maybe next year or at the end of the year. But at least give some kind of gameplay footage. That would be nice because it's been about long enough, I think, since we've gotten nothing on Metroid Prime. Although it's not very likely. I'm thinking at this point it's going to be a next gen game. I'm thinking at this point it's probably going to be a launch title for the Switch 2 or the Switch Forward or the Switch Pro, whatever they end up calling it, whatever the next gen Switch is. Um, Although if there is a Metroid announced, more likely they're going to want to go with the Prime trilogy or the Prime One remake that I hear is in development. Simply because of the fact that if they're thinking, well, we got to reintroduce people to Metroid Prime because it's been so many years since the last one, then they're going to want to at least start off with one. And again, use it as a way to like delay four. Because like, hey, here's one. A couple months later, here's two. A couple months later, here's three. Now we get four next year. I don't know. Again, only time will tell. I could be completely wrong about these, and I'm hoping that I'm wrong about them, because these are just my thoughts and my personal preferences for stuff like the Donkey Kong games and and the Kid Icarus games and all that stuff. Um, because they're all big hitters, you know, like, and usually we get one console. So like Luigi's Mansion 4 is probably going to be a next gen Switch, you know, because we typically get one a generation. We don't usually get two Luigi Mansions um, in a row. We didn't get two. Well, we did get two on the 3DS, but it's technically a remake. But anyways, I've rambled on long enough about this. Thank you guys for watching. As always, I appreciate all the support I can get. I love the fact that you guys take the time to watch my video. And if you watch it this far, feel free to leave a thumbs up to let me know that you have seen it all the way through. I appreciate all the support I can get. You're welcome to subscribe as I try to do stuff like this at least once a week. Um, and I do have some content coming up again as we talk about the Microsoft Bethesda um, presentation after they show it. Anything else that comes along, gaming news wise, along the way. But hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And I will talk to you guys next time. Have a great rest of